Hey, Second Calvary, Brother Tim here with your Civic Corner. At the sound of the word government, most people will squirm and get nervous. The word creates all types of images in people's minds that are enormous in nature, but the government in reality, in my opinion, is very fragile. And the attempt to swiftly dismantle it through executive branch action, as we are witnessing with the current administration, brings this into sharp focus. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is the fragility of our government and our role in it. We need to start out again with a basic civics lesson about the three branches of government and the concepts of checks and balances that were built into the system and their crucial role and our crucial role as citizens in this process. So again, this is things that we already know, things that we already covered, things that you might remember back from school. But the executive branch, we have three branches of government. The first one is our executive branch. It's headed by the president and functions through 15 major departments. And our legislative branch, composed of Congress, is made up of the House of Representatives, which is the lower chamber, and the U.S. Senate, which is the upper chamber. And of course, we round it out with our judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court, and all the inferior or lower courts, federal courts, and the rest of the district and appeals levels. So our government's ability to check and balance itself is on full display. And as citizens, we must keep watch that the system functions as it should. You may feel small in all this, but really you are the core of the process. Right now, a lot is going on, as we've talked about it in episode after episode, and it's happening at a lightning speed. Every day, it's something new, but it's something important. And it could be very overwhelming to try to pick up on areas of the government that are being shuttered, that sometimes some areas we never even heard of before, and trying to understand what this might mean practically for you and your family, for you and your friends. And so it could be a lot. But all the executive action you witness in the news lately, whether it be the immediate imposition of tariffs on other countries, the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, the ICE raids on immigrant communities, some in our own community that we've seen for ourselves, the attempt to shutter the USAID, which is the organization that we use as a vehicle to deliver aid to other countries that are struggling, and to cut 90% or more of their staff. The order for a huge number of government civil employees to take a severance or be fired, or the freezing of all federal funding and grants. All these were really reaches, executive strong kind of arm reaches of the executive branch. But they're all being checked or challenged through the judicial branch of government. So here we are is our basic civics lesson in motion. But the last election season brought a legislative branch that is ran by the same party that is running the executive branch. So there's going to be weak or almost to no checking of the executive branch by the legislative branch. While the minority party is fighting as hard as they can, they don't have the numbers in their favor. And that's how we rule by majority rule in this country. And so we have to watch that. But there's going to be a fight and a push, but know that the leaders in power in the legislative branch are very likely not going to check the executive branch's power too much. So we have to depend on our judicial branch through these next 4 years, maybe in the next 2 years, definitely, but over the next 4 years to kind of stop a lot of these things, at least in their tracks. But the Supreme Court and all the lower federal courts are all run by executive branch appointed, legislative branch approved, life-term judges. And so that life-term part is really important because it creates that independence from the political process that we all want in our judges. They might be appointed by a Republican judge or a Democratic judge. It might be appointed by a Republican president or a Democratic president. But being that they outlive the term of the person who appointed them, it creates that independence. They don't have to listen to what they say, what they want, and most people would think that, well, there was a Republican appointed judge. Then that means they're going to usually do what the Republican president says. And sort of that's not always the case. A lot of them over time, they get comfortable in their seats, and they feel that they could hand down opinions that are based off the Constitution. And while they might have their bent here, left, or right, they do try to come down with the Constitution and where that stands. And so that's not always for the person or the party who put them in power. And so it detaches them somewhat from taking marching orders from the executive branch who appointed them. But we are witnessing Republican-appointed federal judges implement restraining orders, pauses, injunctions, and generally pumping the brakes, albeit temporarily, at least, on the more extreme and potentially harmful executive actions. And this is a good thing. So I think when we look at all that's going on, all the chaos, we can kind of look there for some solace. So we need to learn how, and I think on this show, we could, one episode really dig deep in some of the opinions, reading the opinions that come out of some of these judges' chambers on these subjects that we're all seeing in the news every day. And so this country is used to a relatively stable government compared to other countries in some parts of the world. And some countries experience the chaos of the early days of this new administration every day of their existence. So that's something we can compare us to. Some even change governments multiple times a year. Think of how crazy America would be then. But it never really have a functioning system. So we have something to be proud of in this country, in that our government is relatively stable, and they do have checks and balances. But we got to stay in the game. If we sit back and just watch with no action, our government, can fall apart, literally. The challenging of President Trump's many executive orders have been by citizen-formed groups and organizations through the courts. And so that should give you solace, too, that you could find an organization that is fighting some of these extreme measures, or labor unions that are pushing for the civil service workers of the federal government. There's a lot going on, but it's all citizen-driven. It's all organizations that are outside of the government that are keeping the government accountable. And so an active, informed citizenry is crucial to keeping and key to keeping the functioning of this delicate balance we empower and call the United States government. This is the difference between a strong democracy and weaker ones. As I said before, you can look at some other countries where their governments, they have an election, of the executive. They have an election of whatever their legislative branch of their government is. They might have weak courts. The balance is never balanced, and that's a good word we need to keep balanced. There's never balanced, and a lot of those governments fall apart, and then there's chaos, and we see it on the news, and we're so far away from it, and we think we're so far away from it, but really this could happen here if the balance is not kept. And so citizens, that's us, that's we, you and I, have to keep our government accountable. And I think over the years we have baked in that accountability and that activism, but we can't let up off the pedal. And so I want to encourage you all to stay involved in any way you can. Keep yelling, keep marching, keep researching, keep calling your U.S. congressperson and U.S. senator, keep writing emails, letters, keep tweeting, keep Facebooking, keep Snapchatting, keep TikToking, as long as we have TikTok, at the government, because without the engagement and feedback loop, the system as we know will get weak and eventually crumble. And in every chance, vote. Remember, elections have consequences and ramifications, and this is definitely what we're seeing right now. Whether you voted for the other person, it might feel like this is a consequence of that. Or if you voted for this person, you might be saying, "Hey, I didn't vote for all this chaos." The point is, those votes do tally up. We have a unique process in our election, called the Electoral College. And really, this, you might think, oh, it's just one big election, but it's really 50 different state elections. And so it's 50 different contests for president. And it's winner. Most of the states are winner takes all for the Electoral College. So if each state, it could be a blowout for one person or the other. And then in some states, which we did see, it's a very small margin. And if it's winner take all, as long as you get the majority, you win all those electoral votes, and that makes the electoral numbers what we're all look for and pay attention to every 4 years. So when people say it was a blowout, it really wasn't a blowout. It was really close. So those states where it was really close, every vote mattered. So at every chance, vote. Even if you don't 100% like the candidate that you think you should support to save the country or to keep the balance of government, sitting out really hurts everybody. But as always, if you have any questions and or concerns, ask someone you trust who may have the answers or who can lead you to the right source and to give you the correct answer. And these are trying times, but we are resilient people who have been through worse. We always need to remember there has been worse in this country than this, and we have overcome because we're all looking at each other right now, today. But this has been Brother Tim with your Civic Corner. Can't wait to see you again.